Hi guys, so today I thought I would film a BookTube made me read it video. You may have seen videos like this before. They exist in the BookTube community and in other YouTube communities, where it's an opportunity to talk about things that you have bought or say read because you saw other YouTubers recommend them. So I thought I would tell you about some of the books that I have enjoyed that I had picked up specifically because I'd seen booktubers talking about them over the past few years. I have books that I read in my first year of booktube and some that I've read this year, so you may perhaps hear about some books that you haven't seen me talk about before. These are all books I have enjoyed. However, I don't know if you'd be interested, but I could perhaps see if I could put together a list of books that didn't work for me, that were perhaps overhyped, that I caved bought because other people were raving about them but I didn't necessarily love as much. Let me know. But without further ado, let's get into the books. Oh, and before I forget, as well as linking all of the books down below, as always, I will also link the channels of the booktubers that I saw these books on originally, so you can check them out for more great recommendations. The first book I'm going to mention is a collection of short stories, and it's Kissing the Witch by Emma Donoghue. This is a collection of fairy tale retellings, but the spin on these is that they are all about women saving women. So in these retellings, the princesses or the queens or the witches either save themselves or are saved by other female characters from the stories. There's a lot of women love in here. Some of the relationships are romantic ones and they are just absolutely stunning. I've enjoyed everything I've read by Emma Donoghue, but this was my first introduction to her writing, and what an introduction it was. It has so many wonderful things going on there, and not only are they retellings of fairy tales that you have heard of, like Snow White, they all also interconnect. So the character in the new story will have been a side character from the previous story, and through that Emma Donoghue seamlessly weaves these tales together and they are just stunning. I picked this collection up because of Lena over at Just Kiss My Frog. It was one of the first recommendations of a book I think I got off of YouTube, because I remember Lena mentioning this book either before I'd even started my booktube channel or near the beginning, although I don't think I read it immediately, but it was on my wish list from then, so I feel like this is a good one to start with. Another book I picked up because of Lena, however, and also because of Jen over at Jen Campbell, is The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. I 100% would never have picked up this book if it wasn't for them, which is always fun because it's so interesting to think how your reading might be different or may be lacking if you hadn't discovered this wonderful community online. This is a non-fiction book by Amanda Palmer, who I had no idea who she was beforehand. She is the lead singer of the Dresden Dolls, who are a band, and she's also involved in lots of other artistic projects, and her story is just great. This book is all about her experience developing both a creative career but also trying out different creative paths, about finding her feet, about asking for help, as the title suggests. And it's just so inspiring. I would never have thought it would have had as big an impact on me as it did, but it truly left me feeling invigorated and inspired and all the more passionate about my dreams and goals. So what a wonderful thing to come away from a book with, and I would highly recommend it to everyone, even if you've been perhaps a little bit hesitant. The next book I loved was a more recent read. I read it last year. In fact, I read the whole series because it was a trilogy, and that is A Great and Terrible Beauty by Libba Bray. Now, I actually remember back when I first started booktube, people were talking about this book. I remember hearing about it even back then, but it really took me until hearing how much Monica over at She Might Be Monica just adored Libba Bray as an author to push me over the edge. It just clicked, and it's funny how you can hear about a book years before, but then there's just this moment or this one person, the way they phrase it, or perhaps an article they share, that just tips you over the edge. And it wasn't even necessarily this specific book that Monica was talking about when I first decided to read Libba Bray. I think it was actually Beauty Queens, but I was just inspired to finally check Libba Bray out at that moment, and I'm so glad I did. A Great and Terrible Beauty is a historical fantasy YA series set in the late 1800s and follows our protagonist, who has just moved from India, where she has grown up all her life, to a school on the outskirts of London, an all-girls finishing school. And it's about her life being thrown out of kilter. Her mother's just passed away, but also her discovering these magical realms that she has access to. and She Alone. So it's absolutely wonderful. It explores so many themes of growing up, of finding oneself, of even sexual awakenings. That's one of the themes in there. So much friendship, relationships, what it was like to be a woman at that time in the United Kingdom. So much going on, and I absolutely adored the series. I would definitely say that book has feminist tones to it. And another feminist young adult book that I read because of BookTube, and specifically Sana over Books and Quills, was Only Ever Yours by Louise O'Neill. Louise O'Neill has really left her imprint on the young adult genre since then with her wonderful feminist YA novels, and this was a wonderful introduction to her work. It's a dystopian novel that may remind the reader a little bit of Handmaid's Tale, although it deals with a variety of different topics, in particular body image. So there are a lot of difficult topics covered, like anorexia and bulimia, and the pressure to look a certain way and judging one another, and that's really difficult to read about. It's quite a dark young adult book, but it has a lot of impact, and it really shines a light on current issues in society, not just future possibilities, and it's definitely worth the read. Again, more recently I picked up The Graces by Laura Eve. This is another young adult book, and I do have some more adult books, don't worry, I just seem to be going through these ones at the moment. This is a book for fans of The Craft, the film in particular, because it is all about young witches in high school, or at least potential witches. Our main character starts a new school, and there is a group of 3 siblings everyone's obsessed with, who everyone thinks are witches. They all want to be their friends, they're the coolest people in school, and our main character manages to ingratiate herself with their group. And it's about sort of her getting to know them. Are they witches? Are they not? It's a really great, fun, fascinating read, and the first in a series, although the sequels are not out yet, but I can't wait for the sequel to come out. I heard about this one first from George Lester, so I would highly recommend going and checking him out for some more great recommendations. To shake things up a little bit, I'm going to talk about a graphic novel next, and that is The Encyclopedia of Early Earth by Isabel Greenberg, and it is such a wonderful graphic novel. It's the kind of graphic novel that even if you haven't gotten into graphic novels yet, or a little bit dubious about graphic novels, I would recommend to you. It's so special and such a wonderful example of what graphic novels can be. And I heard about this one again first on Sana from Books and Quills channel. And I'm so grateful that she raved about this one, because then I also read the second book that Isabel Greenberg brought out a few years later, and loved that one even more. She is absolutely a favourite graphic novelist for me. The book itself is set on Early Earth, which is a world that Isabel Greenberg has created, and this book is a story about one character, but through their journey you learn about stories from Early Earth in the past and the present, because it's all about telling stories to one another. So it's like lots of little stories inside a larger narrative, and it's truly stunning inside. Another book I picked up because of a booktuber is Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. I certainly picked this one up because of Jen over at Jen Campbell. It's one of her favourite books of all time, I think. She's really the one that finally pushed me to read it. I'd seen trailers for the film, it'd been out for a really long time, but I'd never necessarily been inclined to actually read it. But her love for it made me finally pick it up last year, and I really enjoyed this one. I think it's really beautifully written and a really intriguing, well constructed story in this interesting world. It's again a dystopian, and it follows 3 friends who grow up in this boarding school along with lots of other children. It's sort of a standard element of society now that there are these boarding schools full of children who have no parents. We don't know really where these children came from at first, and they're there for a purpose. They're being raised to fulfill some purpose in society, and as the book progresses you learn what that purpose is. And as much as it's about this dystopian society, it's also very much about these 3 characters and their existence in this society and their relationships. And again, like I said, it's just beautifully written. Kazuo Ishiguro has since won the Nobel Prize for Literature, I believe, and well deserved based on what I've read of his. To return to some graphic novels, another graphic novel or comic book series I read because of BookTube was I Hate Fairyland. Fairyland by Scotty Young. This is so much fun. It's a comic book series. I first heard about this one on Elena's channel and it's just brilliant. Again, a comic book series for everybody to try even if you've not quite got into comics, because it's about this little girl who goes to magical fairyland, a bit like characters like in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe or other children's books where children end up in magical worlds. However, she ends up trapped there and basically she goes stir crazy because she cannot escape, and she spends decades there and basically becomes an adult but remains in her childhood body, and all she wants is to go home. And this book is so cutesy in the way it's drawn. It's so brightly coloured and childish, but it's so violent. The characters are constantly fighting, horrible things are happening, and it's such a fun adult version of that kind of childish story. Slightly different from my other books, but my next book that I've chosen is Roses by Rose Mannering. Now, this book I actually picked up because the author is a booktuber and I love her videos and really wanted to try her book. Rose Mannering has, of course, her own YouTube channel, her own BookTube channel, and I don't know if I would have heard about this book if I didn't watch BookTube. But Roses is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, and I loved this story, and one of the things I loved about it was that it was so full and such a large proportion of the story is set before Beauty and the Beast even meet. So it is based on Beauty and the Beast, and there are the predictable elements like Beauty and the Beast meeting. However, it's so much more than that, and Rose has really created her own world for this story to exist in. There's lots of political intrigue going on between different groups in society. There are lots of people in the society who have unique appearances or special gifts or seem magical in some way and can use magic, and they're distrusted by all of the other people, and there's a lot of tension there going on in this world. And yeah, it's so much more than just a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. It is its own story and there's so much going on, and it's such a wonderfully intriguing world, and I had been meaning to pick up the sequel Feathers for ages because I really want to know what happens next in this world. And Feathers is based on a different fairy tale retelling focusing on different characters in the world, but also with the characters from the first novel coming into it. So I'm really excited to read that and find out what happens next. But I wanted to include some poetry as well. So one of my most recent BookTube purchases was Don't Call Us Dead by Denez Smith. This is a poetry collection like I mentioned, and the two people in particular who made me want to pick this one up were Jen Campbell again and Simon over at Savage Reads. This one is a collection of poetry that deals with themes of race, of sexuality, LGBT themes, and in particular HIV, being HIV positive, exploring life and death but in quite a unique way, and the poems are so full of impact. They really hit you in the stomach and make you almost reel back for them as if you've had a physical reaction to reading them. And yeah, Denez Smith has an amazing way with words. But lastly, I want to mention a book which I picked up because I saw it on the first ever Booktubers channel I started watching, and that is The Magician by W. Somerset Maugham. I first heard about this book many years ago at the very beginning of me watching BookTube and being on BookTube, and it was on Leslie from Words of a Reader's channel. This is a classic from the early 1900s and it's so good. It's stuck with me all this time, and I remember getting my mum to read it after me and she really enjoyed it as well. It's about a couple of young people who meet this new strange man, the magician, who brings darkness into their life, and it's about the way he disrupts their life, and it's a very dark story and you don't know what's going on, if magic's at play, what's he up to, and it's just so well done. And I've been meaning to read some more W. Somerset Maugham ever since I read that one. Still haven't gone round to it, but I will in the future because I know that I really enjoy his writing. I thought this was such a well written, intriguing story. Definitely one for fans of books like To Raise Rakan by Emile Zola. Now of course those aren't all of the books that I've read because of BookTubes, but those are a few of the highlights that I could vividly remember whose channel I had been recommended them by. I'm sure if I sat down and went through my Goodreads and all of the books I've read in the past few years again, I could pick out some more for you. So if you'd like to see a second installment of this kind of video, then do let me know. I would happily do one. But in the meantime, let me know what books you've picked up because of BookTube. What books have you loved and perhaps would never have discovered if it wasn't for watching people on YouTube recommend books? And are there any books that you've loved that I recommended? I would love to know. So until next time guys, happy reading and I'll see you all again soon. Bye!